Hey guys, today we're going to take a look at how you can create your own scenario for Arma Reforger. You see I already set some little thing up here. I've just been playing around for like an hour or two, figuring out how to actually make anything work. And I'm just going to jump in game and show you what we're going to make. Also, I'm going to cut out all the loading screens because they do take quite a while. So one thing I want to say up front is these are like really good modding tools right now, but I think for a proper Arma 4 they would introduce a real scenario editor, because this is pretty complicated, which is like completely fine if you want to like make a new map or anything. I find it's way too complicated for just a scenario editor. So we're gonna have, you know, faction selection, group selection. You'll be able to select the loadout. You'll be able to select the spawn point and deploy. We're also gonna have AI groups. So you can have either an actual like group that's spawned for you. You know, these guys are already information and everything. Or you can have like individual guys that you place down as you wish. And we're gonna have the Game Master mode on, so you can come in and just modify everything as you go along. We're also gonna have enemies with move waypoints, or they already moved here. They're a bit too quick. Yeah, and just like the basic scenario setup, and then once you get that done, it's up to your creativity. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shut down the workbench, and we're just going to create a new scenario from scratch. Right, so the first thing you want to do is you come to Steam. You'll need to have Reforger actually installed, and you're going to come to this drop down and you're going to hit Tools. And then you'll search for Arma Reforger Tools and install that, and you can start it up. First time you get in here, this will be empty, and it will ask you, like, I think when you click create new, it will ask you to find Reforger. So the file you'll be searching for is going to be in, you know, Steam Apps, Common, Arma Reforger, add-ons, data, and the Arma Reforger G project file. That's the file you're going to select if it asks you that it couldn't find the Reforger project. And just so you know, you can do this with any mod. They're being saved in Documents, My Games, Arma Reforger, Add-ons, and then they have a GUID. And if you go in there, they're going to have a pack with the mod files, and they're also going to have this G project file, which you can open in a workbench. Now, because it's a pack, you can't edit it, so you can't save. So you can't like change the mod and then save it. That doesn't work. Because these, like, pack is like a PBO. So you can't edit it really. You would like have to unpack it first to do that. Right, anyways, we're gonna hit create new. And for now, we're just gonna have Arma Reforger. So you can say, oh, I'm making this new mod, and it depends on, I don't know, it doesn't exist yet, but like ACE or CBA. Soon as they come. Yeah, I'm just gonna hit, just gonna name it tutorial project, I'm gonna hit OK. By the way, I just want to say I didn't figure all of this out myself. Some of this comes from this stream. I've watched this yesterday. Useless Fodder, thanks for this stream. He was like basically also trying to figure some stuff out, and he helped me along with like the first kind of few steps. And you know, I think he wanted to make a video of his own, and I'm just gonna make my own video as well, because I think I'm gonna make a scenario's a bit different than what he's gonna show. But just, you know, props to that guy. Was really helpful. Thank you. And the first thing you want to do, so what we want to do is we want to create a scenario. And a scenario in Arma Reforger is not just like a scenario file, a mission file. It's actually a whole world. And So what we're going to do first is we're going to go to Arma Reforger, Worlds, Eden, and we're going to find eden.ent. This is the world file for Evron, which was, always codenamed Eden. So we're going to open that up, and you see it opened the world editor for us. And it's just going to load up the world. And the way this is going to work is we're having worlds, and then we have missions basically as kind of like a layer on top of a world. Or in the workbench, they call it the sub-scene. So you can imagine the whole world as like a scene, and then a sub-scene is basically saying, I depend on this other scene, you have to load that first, and then you can load me on top. So that's why I like to think of it as layers. Also, you might have heard other games call that layers. Like, I know Squad, I think they make their maps, and then when they add a game mode to that map, they call that a layer. Right, so you're gonna spawn in, and you're gonna have Eden, Evron loaded. And what you see is you can actually edit everything here. Now you're not gonna be able to save it, which you can see because there's this little lock icon on everything here. Basically because, like I said before, we loaded the pack, what used to be PBOs. So you can't really edit those. Before we're actually going to make our own world, I'm just going to come to my tutorial project, right click, new folder. You have to right click down here, not up here. That doesn't work. New folder, I'm just going to call it worlds. These save dialog doesn't allow you to create a new folder, which is kind of dumb, but hey. Anyways, we're not going to want to change anything here. So we're going to hit create new world, and then we're going to select the subscene. This is what I just explained. It's basically saying create a layer on top of this map. And then into that scene, we're going to put everything we want. Thank you. So the first thing you might notice is you're getting put at 0, 0, 0, which is kind of not useful. So what you're just going to do is you're going to open up the default layer, double click on airfield, and well, at least you're on the map somewhere. Next thing we're going to do is you can right click on this layer and hit lock. So if you by accident select something and you try to move it, it says you can't do that, it's locked. But it might still be annoying when you select something because this whole hierarchy is going to jump to that. So you don't want that. What we're going to do instead is we're going to come up here to this like hamburger icon. We're going to hit select from active layer only. And now you can see our unnamed world has a default active layer, and suddenly I can't select anything from Eden anymore. So that's really helpful because it gets really annoying. And the first thing we're going to create is we want AI in our world, but the way Eden is set up, it doesn't by default support AI. Yeah, it sounds crazy, but basically, you don't need it if you don't want AI in your PvP scenario. So it's kind of understandable how it's not there by default. What we're going to do is we're going to come down here to the resource browser, and we're just going to search for world. And under prefabs, we can come over here and find the SCR AI world, and we're just going to drag that into the viewport. You can also take it and drag it to the layer. Yeah. So what this does is it sets up the world, it creates AI settings and it creates a nav mesh. And this is basically what allows the AI to work at all. Without this, you're not going to have any AI. You can also, I don't know if this is necessary, but there's also a perception manager. And I'm just going to drag that in here as well, because I feel it might have something to do with the AI actually seeing you. And there's also a hit drag manager, which we're just going to add, because we probably want hit drag in multiplayer. Now, I don't know if hit drag actually works if this isn't here. I would assume it still does, but I'll just add it to be safe. So these are default managers that we really need to even have like a functioning kind of AI system in our world. And of course, you're free to just, look at everything that's in here and just play around with the things. But we're just going to leave all these to default. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit save. I'm going to go to worlds and I'm going to name this scenario base. So later, if you want to create a second scenario, you don't have to drag these in again. Instead, what you do is you come over here to your worlds and you just double click scenario base. And it's going to bring you right here. And then now you want to create your own scenario. You hit create new world, subscene. And it's going to create a subscene of scenario based this time. So basically what you're saying is I have the scenario. It depends on scenario base. That depends on Eden. So it has to load Eden first. Then it loads scenario base as a layer on top of that. And then it loads your scenario on top of that. So this just makes it easy for you. You don't have to remember to drag these 3 things in every time. You just double click the world and there you go. Again, we're here, but we're just going to double click our hit drag manager and we're back on the island. Great. We're still in active mode, so no selecting these by default, by accident. You can still select them from here if you need to, but there's no accidentally clicking on them in the world like this. Doesn't. Great. So the first thing we actually want is we need to set up a game mode. So you can search for game. Actually, we don't have to search, I think. Right. You want to come to prefabs, multiplayer, modes. And in here you have a few modes. So you have team deathmatch that's set up for you if you want to do that. You have base, which I don't think you should be using. There's also deathmatch. And interesting for us is there's editor. And this is the game master game mode. There's also plain if you want like basically without a game mode. This would be the default thing. Like stuff it does is like there's a game over screen, there's automatic respawning, like player profiles and stuff. You can save, you can like vote on stuff, so you can do that. In our case, no, I want the editor, and I'm gonna drag in editor full because this brings a few things with it. So if we drag this in, you can see it also comes automatically with a faction manager, a radio manager, a text chat, garbage collection, task manager, and loadout manager. Now what we want to do is we want to edit these loadouts. So by default, it has the like rifleman loadout, and it has an saved arsenal loadout. So what you can do is like in Arma 3, you can go to the arsenal, you can create the loadout you want, you can save it, and then you can respawn with that loadout. But we don't want this like default rifleman loadout. I want to get rid of that. So if we try to just come here, you can see we can't remove these because it's like it's a prefab. So basically this is like the default and you can't remove it. So if we try to delete it, it's going to tell us you can't do that because the whole thing, this game mode editor full you dragged in, is a prefab and you can't change prefabs. What we can do though is right click and go to break prefab instance. This is going to break the prefab and make it an instance, and now we can edit it to our liking. So I can just delete the loadout manager. I'm just going to search for loadout, and under prefabs there's going to be the loadout manager base. I'm going to drag that over here. And you can see now we don't have any loadouts, and you can add them as you like. So you can add faction loadout, for example. You can give it a name as you like, say rifleman, and there's a resource for it. And for example, under prefabs, characters, factions, blue 4, US Army, you can find a US rifleman. You can select here. And you also have to give him a faction, he's US. We're going to look at factions in a moment. But So this is how you would set up loadouts, for example. And then you can add, for example, also the player arsenal loadout, and that's basically the saved arsenal loadout. It still needs a resource by default. So just select the rifleman again and give it US again. Of course, you can also just keep the default loadout manager. But in my case, I didn't want that. So just showing you how you could edit loadouts if you'd like that. We're not going to touch the task manager. You can change some settings in the garbage collection. That's basically like bodies or destroyed vehicles get deleted after a while. We have scripted chat, which is basically just, you have your global faction chat, vehicle chat, etc. This is, I believe, just a text chat. We have radio manager, which I believe is for all the whole voice chat thing. And then we have the faction manager. So right now we have 3 factions, and we're gonna have US, and we want it to be playable. So we're gonna come down to is playable and tick that. We have the USSR, and we're gonna have the FIA. And we don't want those to be playable, but we want them to be present. And then that's basically our game mode setup. So yeah, we now have factions that we can play as or fight against. We have some loadouts we can spawn as. And now if you want, you can also come in here and change some settings. For example, I want that the game master, that everyone can be game master. And what I also don't want is auto init editor. This basically means that when you spawn, you're immediately game master and you don't get the respawn screen. But I want people to spawn in and then have the ability to later go into game master mode, so I untick it. We do want auto player respawn, else you're gonna have to handle it through a script, so just leave this on. You can set time limits and stuff here as well. And then you can just have a look through all these different components up here. By the way, if you ever search for something and you don't know which component it's in, but you know it belongs to the game mode, you can click this little icon, this hierarchy mode, and it's just going to drop you in all the components at once. And then you can just search, for example, for faction. And you can go through. And you can say, aha, I didn't want to allow my players to change their faction after they selected it the first time. Or maybe you want to say, I don't want to allow them to select the faction at all. Problem with this is, if you don't allow them to select the faction, sometimes they spawn in and they can't do anything. I don't quite know why this happens. Basically, they spawn in as game master only. They do get the respawn screen because we disabled auto init. But they then have to hold down the Z button, or I guess Y button on English keyboards, to become game master. And then they can place down a character to play as. So maybe just leave on faction select if you disable auto init. Right, and then, you can go through. Also, if you ever want to know what you changed, you can also click on this little gear and click show only modified properties. And then you know what you did to the prefab. So that's very helpful. Right, so now we have our game mode. The only thing missing now for us to actually be able to play is a spawn point. So we're just going to search for spawn point. And one thing, even though it looks like player spawn point, even though that sounds correct, you're not able to spawn there. I don't quite know what it does yet, but what you want is you want the spawn point for the faction. So in our case, we want to be US, the only faction we allow to be playable. We're going to drag in spawn point US, and there it is. Now the way this is set up, you could also drag in spawn point base. And then you have to come down here to faction and type in US, for example. And then in info, you can also select an icon. So we can search for flag maybe. And then maybe, select the US flag here. I believe this is the wrong icon. I think this one uses a different one. Yeah. Anyways, you know, so you can set it up like that. And you can give it a name. My spawn point at the airport. You know, and that's going to show up in the UI. And then you can, you know, say there's not allowed to be a player within 20 meters of this, else it's disabled, and stuff like that. And now when we hit play, oh yeah, we have to save it first. So, you know, go to worlds, call it tutorial scenario, for example. And we hit play. Did it do it? Yeah, there you go. And then you can see we're in. We have the briefing, which by the way, you can disable that if you want. It's just in the game mode. Just go looking through all the components. We can select the US Army faction. We can select the group. This gets automatically created for us. When we join the faction, it creates an empty player group. You can also see this in the log console. So the log console is really important if you have any errors, like you place down an AI and he doesn't spawn for whatever reason, there's bound to be either a warning or an error somewhere in here. Now some of these errors, just ignore them. But for example, here it says that formation of group is invalid. Team members won't be spawned. Now this is our player group, so it doesn't matter. But if you have some error like this, you can debug and find out why whatever you're doing isn't working. And now you can see we have our saved arsenal loadout and our rifleman. We can select those and we have my spawn point. And I think, do we get a description of it? Maybe on the map. No? I don't know where the description is. But yeah, now we're spawned here and we're a rifleman. And that's how you like get ready to play. Alright, so we can spawn, but that's a bit boring. We want some action. So need to play some enemies. And we can find those. They're under prefabs, groups, op 4. And yeah, there we go. There's some groups. For example, a light fire team from the USSR. There we go. We got some guys. And what you'll see is this is like just a single entity. And then it spawns these enemies as part of the group. It spawns some information. So what we can do is, I'm going to enable this again. We can come down to group members, and in unit prefab slots, for example, we could add another. So I'm just going to search for USSR, and let's add, for example, the sharpshooter. And you can see it automatically spawns information and is part of the group. So this is how you can like quickly put groups down. You can of course have them face a different way. But you see it always takes a minute to update, and it's not super great actually, I think. So for example, if you want to change the formation, you have to go here and you actually have to type in what the formation is called. For example, line, column. Do we have V? No, I think it's wedge. So not that great for formations and groups, but you know what I mean. It's easy to very quickly get down a few guys who you can then fight. Also, before I go on, to have a better overview over our scenario, what we can do is right click our scenario and create layer. And I'm gonna call this USSR, for example, and then I can drag these guys onto that layer. I can also double click the layer to make it active so that whatever I place will be in this layer. Note that I can now not select our game mode and stuff because they're not on the active layer. We clicked this select active layer only earlier. I can still click on them in the drop down here though, so that's fine. So, but what if we want like a single sharpshooter who's standing on this roof, for example? Well, what we can do is we can go to characters and we can find factions, opt for USSR, and then drag in a sharpshooter from there. And he'll be created and he'll be standing on this roof. But if we were to spawn in now, this guy would not actually work. What we need to do is we need to come down to this AI control component and we need to click Enable AI. When they're spawned in a group, the group does this for you. But by default, it's disabled for some reason. So if you place down individual guys, you have to come down and enable AI, and then they will be able to interact with you. But what if you want to build your own group and you don't want to use a group preset like this? So what you can do is you can go to groups again. And I think a playable group is as good as any. No, actually isn't. So one problem is, for some reason for op4, they don't have an empty group. If you drag this, there's always guys in here. And the problem is, you cannot delete these defaults. Unless, I guess, what if we break? Yeah, okay. You can break the prefab instance, and then you can, for example, remove these. And this is also a way to place soldiers. You can just have a single soldier in a group. And maybe this is even the better way of placing individual soldiers than this, because the group has like formation, group movement, behavior tree and stuff. Perhaps this makes the AI more intelligent. I don't yet know what parts of AI are individual AI and what parts are group AI. But let's just say we have this guy and we place down a second character. We want to place him somewhere else. We don't want them to stand in formation, but we do want them to be part of the same group. So we have this other guy over here who's just chilling out. But we want him to be part of the same group. What we can do is, first of all, I'm gonna rename this group to something cool that I can remember, like USSR group 1. And then I can come to this individual. I can come down to his AI control component, enable his AI, and I can give him USSR group 1 in his parent AI group name. And now he is assigned to the same group that's over here. This even works if this group is completely empty. So if we were to remove this individual here, like this, now we have an empty group of the USSR. This person will be part of that group over here. One thing that you cannot do for whatever reason is you cannot take, where is he? This guy. You can't take him and make him a child of the group. I don't know why, but this will cause him not to spawn. Just put your soldiers individually next to the group, like this, instead of putting them as a child of the group. Because it's not important that they're a child of the group, that's just for us, so we can, you know, have it visually nice and clear. But what's important for the game is that the parent AI group name is correct. So we're just gonna give this a try and see if this person gets spawned or not. And all the other enemies should work. So let's just jump right in and have a look. And we're gonna deploy. And now I'm just gonna hold the Z button, or I guess on English keyboards it's the Y button. And you can already see there's two groups. And so yeah, our guy didn't spawn. And one thing you'll see is this guy exists, but because he's not part of a group, we don't actually, like, the game master cannot interact with him. It's like he doesn't exist. One tip, you can go in the pause menu, settings. By the way, don't press escape to get there. You have to actually click the button. And go to Game Master and turn on Enable Entity Layer Editing. Turn that to yes. Once you do that, you can middle click on the squad, for example, and then you get access to all the individuals. And you can just click back to world. And then if we click on this group that we created, look, where is he? We focus on him. Well, he's like, I don't know, way out in nowhere. So let's just focus on the other group again. You do this by hovering over them and pressing F. So if I try to move this other person... Oh, I think he just disappeared. I think the game just deleted him. So, yeah. It doesn't work. Don't make them children of the group in the hierarchy. It won't spawn them. But let's have a look if they actually react to us. And if we can have a nice firefight with this sharpshooter. He should see us. Oh, he's walking towards us for some reason. He's running away? He's taking cover? What's he doing? I mean, he's definitely seen us, I think. He's trying to move somewhere, I believe. Yeah, okay, he's shooting at us. He's taking his time. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab this guy and we're gonna unparent him. And then we got that all done. And I'm just gonna give him the same group. So he's gonna be in USSR group 1 as well. And then I don't even know how they figure out who's group leader and who isn't. And I don't know if there's ranks and stuff we used to have. I mean, go have a look through all their components, or maybe it's in the group somewhere. Again, there's formation, all kinds of stuff that you can try out. Oh, look, skill. Let's turn that all the way up for these guys as well. And yeah, that's pretty nice. Let's have a look at giving these guys a waypoint, because it's kind of boring if they can't move anywhere. So let's just search for waypoint down here. And under prefabs, we should be able to find them. And we should be able to find a move waypoint. I'm just going to drag that over here, and I'm going to have them move to this bar gate. Completion type, any, leader, all. You know, normal waypoint. So what's kind of missing here is settings like how fast should they move to the waypoint and stuff. But, you know, at least we have a waypoint. I wonder, maybe there is a script. Oh, look, there's even an open gate waypoint. Let's just give that a try. An act smart action. I don't know if that will work. Let's just try it. So what you can do though with waypoints, you can put them in a group. So let's find our fire team here. Just gonna call them fire team 1. And I'm gonna find a waypoint. I'm gonna move it into the fire team, so it's a child. I'm gonna call it move 1. and then open gate. And now if I go to the fire team, under group waypoints, under static waypoints, I can add move one, and then I can add open gate. And now this group has the waypoint of going over here and then going to the gate and opening it, hopefully. Anyway, let's actually, before we hop in, let's just look at one more thing, is we can also place down vehicles and stuff. There's also a thing you cannot at the moment place down manned vehicles. You can place down vehicles and place a get in waypoint. But vehicles are, unsurprisingly, under prefabs, vehicles, and then under wheeled we have, for example, the BDR, which we can drag in, and I can rotate it so it can give us some protection from the group while we make our way up here. Right, and in the same way you can go to vegetation and you can, I don't know, place down bushes and whatnot. There's also the prefab library, which is pretty much just this prefab library folder, but I guess maybe it's a bit nicer. I don't know. And I'm just gonna jump into Game Master right away. Actually, that was a bad idea. No, I can focus on them. So you can see there's a group, and yeah, so the leader is walking very fast while the other guys don't really hurry that much. We can see our sniper is here, and we can actually select him now. And there's our other guy, and apparently sniper is group leader. And okay, so open gate doesn't work. Waypoint is not set properly. Okay, cool. So they moved here and they tried to open the gate, but we did something wrong. Maybe the lock console has some more information for us. And act smart action, not set properly, whatever. Yeah, so our guys are here, the BTR is here, the bush is here, and let's just spawn as a rifleman that we will live as. There's the bush. Sharpshooter, for whatever reason, decides to jump down again. I have no idea if I've hit him. Oh no, there he is. And the great thing is you don't need actually to make everything here, because you can just enable Game Master and then place things down as you go. So for example, AI, I would do that in Game Master probably. But if you want to prepare some structure, you want to prepare some roadblocks, you want to prepare some, you know, more complex things, you can just do that up front and then use Game Master to do like AI and more simple things in real time. But yeah, so this is how you would build a simple scenario. Right, that's it. A lot of fun modding, and I'll see you next time. Bye.